This show is part of the RetroZap.com podcast network.
Wow. Will you look at that?
Quite a haul. Let's check it out. There may be some clues.
Jeff, take a look at this. It's Zira's book. Their names are on the cover.
Hey, look, robes. Just like the Underdwellers. You don't think it could be...
Shh! Somebody's coming. Quick!
Come on, let's get out of here.
But what about all this stuff? Zira's book.
Leave it for now. I have an idea.
Hey, Ape fans! Welcome to Talking Apes TV. This is your Planet of the Apes podcast where we reintroduce and break down the Planet of the Apes TV series, the live-action series from 1974, and now the animated series titled Return to the Planet of the Apes, which aired during the Saturday morning cartoon block on NBC in 1975. This was the year that Robert De Niro won an Oscar for his performance as Don Vito Corleone in Godfather 2, the only fictional character to have received more than one Academy Award for portrayal. Before then, Marlon Brando won for the same character in The Godfather.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
And as an extra fun fact that you can use at all parties, neither showed up to accept the award. And after the recent Rogue One snub, I wouldn't show up to accept my Academy Ape award either. That's a foreshadowing into what we're going to hear later on. The Academy Ape Awards. So much fun to say. I am Richard Woloski, and now, when talking about such an Urko-tastic universe, I wouldn't be able to do it alone. Here is my Talking Apes TV co-host, the man who wouldn't know a puddle if he fell in one, Mark Ogushowitz. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Rich. You had to go there, huh? You know, I have a bone to pick with you over the last episode, and it has nothing to do with the puddle.
No?
No. Ever since editing that last episode, I have not been able to get the theme song to HR Pufnstuf out of my head.
Why would you want to?
I didn't like the show, remember? We talked about it, and now everywhere I go, I have in my head, HR Pufnstuf.
Doesn't matter if you like this show or not. It's an awesome theme song. One of the best theme songs ever.
Well, evidently it works like a theme song's supposed to work because I can't get it out of my head.
Well, you know what? I've been singing it since 1973, and I haven't looked back since.
Every day?
Every single day. And I noticed you're glossing over this whole puddle thing, but you know what? We're going to talk about that later on.
Yes, we are. Because I did go and post that picture that I promised I was going to post from the last episode with Bill and Jeff, you know, getting that water from what I said was a puddle and you said was not.
A lot of the apes had a lot of comments to make about whether or not it was a puddle, especially from our good friend Russ Flores, who wrote out a big dissertation about whether or not it was a puddle. But you know what? Enough puddle talk for right now. Mark, now it's time to reveal the contest winner of Planet of the Apes Tales from the Forbidden Zone, courtesy of Titan Books. Now, they had given us a copy to give out to one lucky ape out there.
But you know what, Rich? Before we reveal who the lucky winner is, why don't we first read some of the Facebook comments we had gotten about the contest? Because on Facebook, we had asked the ape listeners to tell us which classic ape characters they were hoping would be represented in the book.
Now, let's kick it off with Harry Callahan.
All right, and Harry Callahan wrote in, Urko. It's all about Urko.
I couldn't agree more, Harry. That was the one character I really wanted to read most about, because where you find Urko, you find his helmet.
Right.
And then Stephen J. Todd writes, there are so many great characters throughout the classic films. Ursus is my favorite in Beneath the Planet of the Apes. But I always wonder what happened with Taylor and Nova between the ending of the first movie and the beginning of the second. One question, how much time passed for them to be together? James Mormon writes, I'm hoping to hear about Virgil, the orangutan in Battle for the Planet of the Apes. I've always been curious to hear his origin story.
Virgil, that's an interesting choice.
You read the next one.
All right, so this is a tough one to pronounce. I hope I don't butcher it too badly. But let's go ahead and give it a shot. It's Ianthe Avalon? Does that sound about right?
Yes.
All right, so this listener writes in, I'd love to read a story about Captain Seiko. Barring that, a first-person narrative of Urko's hat would be the bee's knees. This listener wants to hear a story about Captain Seiko from The Trap. How cool would that be? I didn't even think about that gorilla soldier, but that would be cool.
Yeah, that would be very awesome, because what happened after Seiko had let Pete, Allen, and Galen go at the end of the episode?
Exactly.
Did he survive the day? I don't think he did.
No. That would be a cool continuation. I'm glad that one of our listeners keyed in on that.
Yeah. Well, next, Rob Olive writes, The Lawgiver. No more, no less. Just The Lawgiver. Now, you read the next one, because this is all about you, Mark.
Okay, Stephen Panisi. He writes, Major Peter J. Burke. I'm hoping for some backstory. Oh, man. Memories. Because I've been looking for Pete backstory as well. How many episodes did I ask for Pete backstory?
Every single episode.
Right.
Now, Philip Day writes, I'd like to read more about General Ursus. His character needs to be explored. Would like to read more dialogue between him and Zaius.
That would be good.
Yeah, he's a very underrated character.
Then you got Joshua Jordan. He wrote, Galen is the character that I am most excited about. I feel he is one of the more rounded characters in the Planet of the Apes universe. I agree with that. I really like Galen as a character.
All right, now, Mark, let's now reveal the contest winner. Which ape will receive Tales from the Forbidden Zone? Drum roll, please. And the winner is Jerry Lang. Congratulations to Jerry.
Congratulations.
All you gotta do is send us your address through a message on Facebook, and we will get this right out to you.
Now, you will have until May the 15th to get back to us. Otherwise, we will be drawing another name, and another ape winner will receive this copy of the book. So, once again, congratulations to Jerry Lang, and thank you to all that entered.
All right, Mark, with that, let's get into this episode, Invasion of the Underdwellers. This is the 12th episode, the second to the last in the series. And now this aired November 22nd, 1975. In this episode, Ape City is being burglarized. Valuable items are stolen from the museum, from ape archives, and from ape homes. Into the night, familiar hooded figures sneak into the cemetery where all the stolen items are hidden. In a plot twist, we see that it is Urko and his gorillas who are disguising themselves as underdwellers in hopes of framing them and convincing Dr. Zaius to declare war on the world below. However, Krator, leader of the Underdwellers, he knows the secret and warns Bill, Jeff, and Judy. Now, they must quickly tell Zara and Cornelius, who can let Dr. Zaius in on the plan so he can put a stop to it. It may be too late, since Urko has already sent a barge full of explosives to destroy the underground territory of the Underdwellers. Now, Mark, what is your thoughts on this episode, Invasion of the Underdwellers?
I don't know if I really want to go into this too much at the beginning like we normally do, because I really dislike this episode. So much of it doesn't make any sense. I feel like everyone involved in the making of this episode knew their jobs were over, the show was going off the air, and so they weren't even trying anymore. Basically, there are a lot of stupid mistakes in the editing, very little attention to detail, and it just all feels sloppy in its execution. And one last thing, and this is something that I have a feeling I didn't like, but you did. And that's how many corny plays on names like William Apespear did we have to get, and they were all groan-worthy.
Well, if you noticed, I started off the show with a 1975 reference that had all to do with the Academy Awards, just so I could say Academy Awards. I love that.
I know you do. Don't get me started. I didn't like this episode. I just can't wait to start digging into it so you can start explaining things to me.
Well, this episode is just way out of order. I don't know why they put it here. It almost felt like they had made it, forgot about it, and said, oh, let's just shoehorn it in here because it has to do with the Underdwellers. So this should have gone, I think, right after the Unearthly Prophecy, which was the 5th episode. We're on the 12th episode right now. So this does not fit anywhere in this timeline.
I'm thinking now, if it had been in a different order and been placed right after Unearthly Prophecy, which might have been a better placement for it because of one major issue that I had, which we'll get into in a little bit, would I have thought it was a better episode because it felt more in place? I don't think so, because I just think that the whole entire episode is a mess. Things don't make sense, even in the scheme of the Underdwellers. I think it would have been better after the Unearthly Prophecy, but I still don't think I would have liked it. Now that I'm thinking about it, there's actually something that happens at the end of the episode that might not have made sense if it came right after the Unearthly Prophecy. But you know something? We can talk about that when we get to it.
All right, so let's now get into Invasion of the Underdwellers.
So, we open up inside the Ape City Museum, which has just been robbed. And as we look around, we see a bunch of walls with those clean areas where the paintings used to be. You know how your wall gets faded by the sun, but any painting that's up there, well, the sun doesn't get behind the painting, so when you take the painting down, you see that nice clean section. So we're seeing a lot of that on the walls because all these paintings have been taken down and stolen. And what I'm assuming is a guard, even though he looks more like he's wearing pajamas instead of a uniform. We get a shot of him, and he's got this crazy look on his face, and he calls out,
"Help! Robbery! Police!"
Why is this ape shouting out to the police from inside a building? Who does he think's going to hear? Shouldn't he maybe pick up the phone and call 911 or whatever the equivalent of 911 is in Ape City?
This is Rosebud all over again. Because when he drops the snow globe in the beginning of Citizen Kane and says Rosebud, there's no one there to hear him say that.
But yet the whole entire movie
is all based on that.
Is all based on that. Oh my God, I would have never made that connection, but that is a major complaint I've always had about Citizen Kane. So good call on that.
Now, nothing for nothing, I want this cell. When I go to conventions now, I want to look for Return to the Planet of the Apes cells that we can buy, and I want the cell of this old ape with a Fu Manchu mustache with a flashlight looking like he just saw the fact that this series was going to end next episode.
While wearing pajamas, like he just woke up in the middle of the night from a nightmare of him getting the news that his animated series is going off the air.
And the way his eyes are drawn, they're like Warner Brother cartoons with a bazooka, bazooka.
Okay, so now this is just a little minor issue, him calling out help when nobody could possibly hear him. But this episode is filled with little things like this that they just pile up on top of each other, and is one of the reasons why I did not have a fun time watching the show, because throughout the whole entire episode, I kept saying to myself, what? And this was the first. And it was only about 10 seconds into the episode.
But now he yells, "Help, police, help." And we cut to a police dispatch. And the police dispatch is saying, calling all cars, calling all cars. So apparently the police station did hear his cry for help. So maybe there's some kind of intercom system that goes right to the police station because these guys heard it. It's right there.
Okay, but it didn't look like he was pushing an intercom. He had his hands up to his...
Mark, it's like Siri. It's voice activated. So there's one more reason to like the episode now. So cross that off your list.
Okay, in 1975, that wouldn't have applied because there was no Siri.
There was also no talking apes either.
Okay, but in 2017, I guess maybe you can make that argument.
Thank you. Let's move on. Cross that one off your list of grievances.
Okay, it's not crossed off, but okay.
All right, moving right along.
Okay, so like you said, we had the cop on the dispatch radio calling all cars, and he's actually announcing a number of burglaries.
Calling all cars, burglary at the Ape City Museum, code 3, 11 Frank 2, 11 Frank 2, burglary at the Ape City Archives, code 3, 9 Charlie 1, 9 Charlie 1, burglary at the Public Library, code 3.
So this announces to us that there's just a mayhem of burglaries going on all throughout the city. The one place that we see at the beginning of the episode is actually not the only burglary.
We cut to Cornelius and Zira as they're getting home, and Cornelius says, "Is it still there?"
Wait. Before we get to that, we see them outside the door, and Cornelius is checking the door, and he says,
You see? The door's still locked. I told you there was nothing to worry about.
Now, obviously, Cornelius and Zira have been listening to the news because they know that there have been a lot of break-ins happening, and they're concerned that someone may have broken into their house. Now, why would this concern them? The police aren't announcing homes being broken into, just big buildings like museums and archives and libraries.
Well, they know they've got a very special artifact in their house, so I think their mind went right to there. We got something very valuable. Is that in the target sights of these thieves?
Okay, I wish maybe he had said that, because right now, before they get into the house, I didn't know they had anything valuable in their house, so I'm kind of being taken out of the story going, why are they concerned?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a very valid concern, because I had no idea what he was talking about either.
Right, and so then they go into the house, and we get this interaction.
You see, it's still there.
Cornelius, look, it's gone.
Okay, so here's where we find out about the item that you were just mentioning and the fact that it actually is missing. And it's Zira that notices that the item, which we're going to find out what it is in a second, but we'll get to that. It's Zira who actually is the one that notices that it's missing. And here's another one of those small problematic details that the producers or whoever could have left out of the episode. Before Zira notices that the item is missing, Cornelius, for some reason, tells her that it's actually still there. He says, you see, it's still there, but it's not. She's going to notice it missing. Of course, if Cornelius had actually taken the time to look around the room before making his comment, he would have seen this. But if you watch closely, Cornelius actually goes from looking at the door he's locking straight to looking at Zira while never once glancing around the room. So why does he tell her that the item is still there? It makes no sense. We should have just gone straight to Zira noticing the item missing. Just another one of those small things that takes me out of the episode. But now, moving on, Zira does notice that something is missing, and then we get a shot of a small display case, and it has an engraved nameplate. This is the first example of the play on words that I don't like and you love.
So funny. So funny.
When on the display case it says,
this is good stuff here.
William Ape Spear, first edition. And the display case is empty.
Ape Spear, that's good stuff.
Now, I want you to remember something, because what was in the display case and is now missing was a book by William Ape Spear. And the nameplate on the display case says first edition. And so remember that, because we're going to come back to this in a little bit. And so now the bad puns begin with William Ape Spear, and we got them every once in a while in this series, but never to the amount we're going to get them here. So I'm glad that you enjoyed them.
I so did. All right, so now what happens?
We cut to the red, I want to say bat phone, but I'm going to say red ape phone. See, I can do it too.
That's so not funny, Mark. Leave the comedy to Return to the Planet of the Apes, okay?
Okay. And Cornelius picks it up, and he calls the police.
Operator, get me the police. I want to report a burglary. Hello, police. I want to report a theft. A valuable antique. A family heirloom. It's a first edition of the collected works of William Ape Spear. It was a wedding gift from my wife's uncle, and it means a great deal to us.
Now, when he's talking to the police on the phone, we cut outside of Cornelius and Zira's house, and we can see Cornelius on the phone through the window, but we can also see these two figures dressed in robes that look like Underdwellers outside the house looking in on Cornelius and Zira. You think that those are the Underdwellers, or something else is going on?
Well, I'm going to guess because they're dressed like Underdwellers, look like Underdwellers, and smell like Underdwellers, they're Underdwellers.
And it would have been really cool if they had been Underdwellers too, but as we move into the next scene, we're going to find out a little twist. At this point, the hooded figures turn around and walk away, but not before we see one is carrying the book that Cornelius is calling the police about. So now we cut to a mysterious-looking graveyard and pan over to a mausoleum that has two guards standing near its entrance. And then we hear voices, which we're going to find out are coming from inside the mausoleum.
Now that we've taken everything of value in Ape City,
There's only one thing left, the inevitable. Dr. Zaius will be forced to declare war on the Underdwellers.
Now, this scene is really short, but it's filled with a lot of things to talk about. First of all, as the voices are being heard, we pan across a room that seems to be filled with Underdwellers. And what's going on here is the producers are trying to fool us into thinking that it's the Underdwellers that are behind the thefts. But then we get a close-up of one of the hooded figures as he takes down his hood, and it turns out to be Urko. And this is supposed to be one of these moments that, surprises the audience because we didn't see it coming. And we're supposed to be like, oh my God, it's Urko. But the problem is we hear Urko's voice long before he takes down the hood. And therefore, we know before the actual reveal that it's Urko.
But we're thinking, wait a minute, because they're panning across the inside of this tomb, this mausoleum, with all of these stolen artifacts. Wait a minute, we're hearing Urko, but that couldn't be Urko because Urko would never steal from another ape.
That might be how you interpreted it, but I saw it differently. The minute I heard his voice, I knew it was Urko under the robe. And therefore, this twist really didn't work for me. They gave it away too early, and immediately upon hearing the voice, I was thinking that underneath one of these robes, it's either Urko or Fred Flintstone. And I knew it wasn't Fred Flintstone, although that would have been cool.
Or it could have been Mr. Babbitt from the Monkees.
But here in this scene, we are given the seed of Urko's plan, and we are given the elements of what is actually going on. And that is, Urko is setting up the Underdwellers to take the fall for these thefts so that Zeus will be forced to declare war against the Underdwellers. And I got a question, because this was something that was pretty problematic about the episode for me as well. And that is, why is Urko all of a sudden going after the Underdwellers? Has he forgotten about his plane and the humanoids and Blue Eyes and Bill and Jeff? He seems to have just forgot all about that.
That's what I was saying earlier. These are all out of order because this does not belong right here, the second to the last episode. I think they just misplaced it, found it, and let's just shoehorn it in.
Right, and that does make sense as an answer, but they did put it here, so now I'm trying to make sense of it within the order of the episodes.
Oh boy, you're going to be here all day long, because you can't retcon this. Just take it as it was aired out of order.
But the thing is I didn't watch it out of order. I watched it in this order. This is the order they told us to watch it in, so I do have a problem with this. Because all the way through the episode, I'm kind of like, why are they not going after Bill, Judy, and Jeff? I don't understand. Why doesn't Urko care about them anymore, or the plane anymore? I guess putting it in the order that you're suggesting might help things, but then again, there's something pretty important that happens at the end of this episode that I don't want to get into right now that would have to be taken out because that thing wouldn't fit where you want to place this episode. But if the producers were willing to change that part of the episode, sorry I'm being vague, but once again, I don't really want to give it away just yet. If the producers were willing to change that part of the episode, then I could see putting it where you want to place it and having it work a little bit better. But I'm sorry, the producers chose to give it to us in this order, and that makes it problematic to me.
I hope this doesn't give you sleeping problems at night.
Oh man, I am like on no sleep after watching this show.
All right, well, you know what? We'll do our best to retcon the rest of the plot. So let's move on here. Let's try to ease your pain, Mark. Go to a happy place.
Now, I will admit that there is something pretty interesting in this scene that I'm sure you must have gone ape over. And that is that when Urko pulls the hood of the robe down off of his head, he's wearing his helmet underneath that hood.
Well, of course he is. This battle helmet.
What do you mean, of course he is? I figured that the minute he pulled down his robe and it showed his helmet, this would be something that you'd want to talk about. That this is something that you would have noticed right away. Something you would have gone ape over.
You noticed that, but you didn't notice another inconsistency that which I don't even want to bring up, but I will. Now, this mausoleum is the mausoleum of the Unknown Ape, a spin on the Unknown Soldier. But if you look at the concrete statues that are applied to the front of the mausoleum, those figures are not apes, they're humans.
No, I did not notice that.
So if you look right on the front of the mausoleum, there are two heads, which are human heads. They're not ape heads.
Well, first of all, we don't know at this point that this is the tomb of the Unknown Ape, so let's not get ahead of ourselves. We'll find that out in a little bit. But also, like I said, I didn't notice these statues. I'm going to have to go back after we're done recording and take a look at this, because that is kind of interesting. Why would we have human-looking statues outside the mausoleum of an ape tomb?
Now, honestly, I didn't notice that until my third pass on the episode.
So what are you getting on my case for?
Because I know you watched the episodes 4 or 5 times.
I watched it twice.
Twice. Oh, you're lagging. Come on, Mark. It's the end of the series. Come on. Let's pick it up here. All right, cut 2.
Okay, so we dissolve to an older ape, and he's being interviewed by the press. And we're going to find out that this ape is the museum curator.
Gone. All of Ape City's most precious works of art. They're priceless.
Do you think it could have been the Underdwellers?
The Underdwellers? Yes. I suppose anything's possible.
Extra! Extra! Museum curator accuses Underdwellers of burglary.
The Underdwellers?
I'm going home and locking the doors right now.
We're being invaded.
Now, do you think one of those reporters is Dick Huntley?
I hope so.
From an episode where we saw pigs and goats and cheese and tarantulas and baboons?
Right, that one.
And vampires. That one.
Right. All I know is that this scene is short, but it's important because we get to see what Urko's trying to do is working, because apes are now actually buying into the fact that the Underdwellers might actually be behind all these burglaries. And along with the museum curator, we also get a newspaper ape selling the news on the street corner, saying extra, extra, selling the news that the Underdwellers are behind this, and that is followed by some ape reactions to the fact that they believe that the Underdwellers are actually behind this. And this, once again, shows that, the word is getting out there. It's spreading that this is the Underdwellers. So Urko, his plan is pretty effective.
Right. Yeah, very much so. It's Urko.
So now we dissolve to Cornelius and Zira, and it's evening, and they're driving in their Jeep as they're heading to New Valley to look for Blue Eyes, Jeff, and Judy. We're not really sure at this point why they're looking for Blue Eyes, Jeff, and Judy, but we're going to find that out in a couple of minutes. This is just a short little scene, very unimportant, probably just being used as some sort of transition into the next scene, because when we cut to the next scene, we're in New Valley, and it's actually the next day, and one of the humanoids is pointing to something and is speaking his humanoid gibberish.
Aquu! Aquu! Bill! Jeff! Aquu!
It's the emergency signal. 3 flashes. Cornelius must need us.
I wonder what's wrong.
Whatever it is, it must be important.
Then I'm coming along too.
So this is another really short scene, but this one's got a little bit of importance to it because it's the scene where, Bill, Jeff, and Judy are going to notice the emergency signal that Cornelius and Zira are flashing so that they know that, they need to go talk to these apes about whatever it is they want to talk to them about. But I did notice something that was pretty interesting to me in this scene, and that is this particular humanoid that we see. He has learned Bill and Jeff's name.
Oh, very true.
He says Bill, Jeff. Generally, they're just speaking gibberish. The only humanoid that ever speaks the names is Nova.
Yeah, you know what? You're right. I didn't notice that.
So Bill, Jeff, and Judy recognize that this is the signal that they set up with Cornelius and Zira. So they figure something's wrong, and they head out to meet with Cornelius and Zira. Now, let me ask you a question. Why didn't Cornelius and Zira drive to New Valley?
Well, they're driving out to New Valley.
Well, they were driving out to New Valley, but then they stopped at a certain point in order to flash their signal. But then they don't continue to New Valley. It's actually Bill, Jeff, and Judy who have to go out to Cornelius and Zira, who are in the Forbidden Zone. If Cornelius and Zira had gone into New Valley, they could have gone into one of the Pueblos, where it would have been a safer place to talk as opposed to the Forbidden Zone, where guerrillas might have been able to spot them.
But no one goes out to the Forbidden Zone. That's why they call it the Forbidden Zone. And you're missing one important aspect. If they didn't drive to where they did, they wouldn't be able to use that awesome flash device that I love so much.
Right, but they could have still used the awesome flash device, which I'm pretty sure they didn't use. I'm pretty sure they used a small mirror.
You know what? You're right. that little tiny compact mirror.
But that doesn't even matter because they could use the signal to say, hey, it's us, let us in, and then they could have driven there. And it just seems like it would have been a safer place to meet. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I just think that they don't want to be seen in New Valley with the humanoids, but somewhere out in the neutral territory, they're going to feel a little bit safer if they're caught. Just in case the gorillas rolled up, it's an easier argument to say that we're out in the middle of this forbidden zone rather than try to make an excuse as to why they're in New Valley in the village of the humanoids.
So you're thinking that if they ended up getting caught while in New Valley, then Zaius could sit there and say, see, I told you you guys were in it with the humans.
Yes.
This is proof that you're helping the humanoids.
Yes.
And so by catching them in the forbidden zone, they can still make up excuses that sound legitimate.
Yes.
Okay, I'm buying that. I still think they should have gone where they may not have gotten caught because they would have been inside pueblos. They could have hidden easier. But I'll buy what you're saying. I'll take that into consideration. That makes sense.
All right, good.
So now we move forward, and Bill, Jeff, and Judy are meeting with Cornelius and Zira in the Forbidden Zone, and it becomes clear why Cornelius and Zira were looking for them. Because Cornelius and Zira know that Bill, Jeff, and Judy have a relationship with the Underdwellers, they're hoping that Bill, Jeff, and Judy will go talk to the Underdwellers and get them to return the items that were supposedly stolen by them. Because, and this is interesting, it would seem that Cornelius and Zira actually believe everything that's being said in Ape City, and they actually think that the Underdwellers are behind this. Of course, in the middle of the conversation, in hologram form, Krator makes an appearance.
Surely you can try to convince them to stop stealing, to give everything back.
I just can't fathom it. Why would the Underdwellers want to steal old works of ape art at the risk of war?
What do you think, Judy? You know Krator better than any of us.
It just doesn't sound right. It's not like them. Krator would never allow it.
Usa speaks the truth.
Look!
A ghost!
Don't be frightened. It's just a vision.
It's Krator, the leader of the Underdwellers.
It is against the law of the Underdwellers to steal. We did not take what you seek, but we do know where to find it.
If you didn't do it, then who did?
You must see for yourselves. We need your help to avoid war. You will journey to our city and bring your cutting tool. Your answers are here. You will come now.
That was frightening.
Do you believe him?
There's only one way to find out.
We'd better not keep the man waiting.
Goodbye, Cornelius. Zira.
Okay, so in this scene, Krator basically tells them that it's not the Underdwellers stealing. Matter of fact, it's against the law for the Underdwellers to steal. But he does know where the stolen items are being kept. And you get the impression like, he can take them to where the stuff is and probably prove, that they didn't take it. And my whole question is, why did this episode even have to take place? Why didn't he just appear to Zaius and say, Dr. Zaius, we're not taking this. I can show you where the stuff is.
Oh, come on.
And we can probably even prove to you who's taking it.
Oh, come on. Would Zaius ever listen to an Underdweller? Not a chance.
Okay, I thought about that because that makes sense at first, but think about it. First of all, Krator would not be in any danger because he's a hologram. So going to Zaius wouldn't hurt him any. And if Zaius didn't agree with him, didn't believe him, okay, he took his shot.
Zaius would think it was a trap.
But he's going to accuse Urko. And Zaius is really against Urko. So you would figure that Zaius might say, okay, well, it doesn't hurt to look into this.
But Krator does not know this. He does not know that Zaius and Urko are always at odds. And he's not going to go to Zaius because Zaius would not listen to him. And I think he knows that. So he's going to go to Bill, Jeff, and Judy, who have got a connection to Cornelius and Zira.
First of all, Krator would know this because a little bit later, this is another problem I have with the episode, a little bit later on, we're going to find out that Krator, through his laser eye projectors, pretty much can see anything. And so because he can see anything, and we'll get into this in a little bit, he's probably always spying on the apes. And so he would know that Zaius and Urko are at odds. And he would know to take this chance. And even if the chance failed, he would be putting himself in no danger whatsoever because he's sending a hologram to go do it. And Zaius can't hurt him through a hologram. So why not at least give it a chance?
Now, one thing I do want to say about Krator, I love his voice. I'm not sure who the actor is because they don't give credit to him, but he's the only actor to give a character any kind of vocal character. When the actors are reading for the gorillas and the apes and the chimpanzees, I don't think they really knew who they were reading for because there's no characteristics whatsoever. But Krator is the only character who's got anything to his voice, any kind of texture. And I got to give out a big round of applause to the actor who plays Krator.
Now, we go to a council meeting where Urko is addressing the council to try and convince them that they must prepare for a war against the Underdwellers.
This is a council of war, called to hear General Urko's witnesses. If their testimony is conclusive, we shall be forced to declare war on the Underdwellers. You may proceed, General. Call your first witness.
Call the first witness, Mrs. Thora von Gruen.
Now, Mrs. von Gruen, in your own words, kindly tell the council exactly what you saw with your own eyes and the night in question.
I was alone in my bedchamber when I heard a noise. I went to investigate, and then...
And then what, Mrs. von Gruen?
And then I saw those great hooded creatures with glowing red eyes. They were stealing my prized silver punch bowl.
Tell us, Mrs. von Gruen, just why haven't you come forward before?
Yes, why haven't you come forward?
Because they told me if I said anything, that they'd come back and get me. I was too frightened.
Frightened, she says. More like terrified, I say. You heard her, gentle apes. Great hooded creatures with glowing red eyes. Nearly the very same description that's in the Simian Book of Prophecy.
Call the second witness.
I was on guard duty at the Museum of Ape Art History. I was making my rounds when I discovered the ape Elisa was missing. As I ran to sound the alarm, 5 giant hooded creatures with glowing red eyes blocked my path. Each had a painting under its massive arm.
And what happened then, Captain Greylor?
When I tried to stop them, streaks of hot light shot out of their eyes and knocked me unconscious. I was bound and gagged and left in the Forbidden Zone. As you can see, I just got back to Ape City.
Bound, gagged, and left to the horrors of the Forbidden Zone. Look at this patriotic ape. Another living testimony to the terrors of the Underdwellers. Gentle simians, senators, members of the council, I ask you, I plead with you, nay, I beg you, for a declaration of war.
So, this scene basically shows us that Urko really wants to go to war with the Underdwellers, as he has brought up 2 witnesses to testify that they saw the Underdwellers commit the thefts. Now, I wonder if you noticed something in this scene. After the old woman witness gives her testimony, Urko gets forceful and pounds his fist down. And when he pounds his fist down, we get a shot as his fist lands on a book that is sitting on the desk in front of him. And this book is the collections of William Ape Spear that was stolen from Cornelius and Zira. Did you see this shot?
Oh, I sure did.
Why is this shot here? You'll notice in the next shot he's holding up a book, but it is not the collected works of William Ape Spear that he's holding up, because it's a totally different color, and he references it as the Simian Book of Prophecy. So I'm not necessarily sure why they went to this shot of Urko putting his fist down on this book of William Ape Spear's, because it doesn't make sense. First of all, it's one of the stolen books, so he's not going to bring it into court, because then he's basically saying, I have possession of it, but he wants people to think it's stolen. So it should probably be hidden with the rest of the items. Then we cut to the next shot, and he's holding up the Simian Book of Prophecy, and we slowly pull back, and we see the table, and the table doesn't have any books on it, which makes me think that that shot was a mistake. It somehow got placed in, and it wasn't supposed to be put in there, and nobody caught this mistake. Sloppy.
Obviously, it's a mistake in production.
But these are the things, as I'm watching the episode, I'm thinking it's sloppy.
It is very sloppy.
And I'm thinking to myself, they don't care about the show anymore. They're just throwing it together.
They've done things like this throughout the whole series. They're working on a budget.
We've never had a misplaced shot like this, a glaring misplaced shot like this.
The whole episode is a misplaced episode. So So, you know what? Having a misplaced shot is just symbolic.
But when we get to the end, I'm going to explain to you why it's not a misplaced episode. I just don't want to do that until we get to the end because I would be giving something away that's pretty major at the end.
All right, so let's move on.
So I was bothered by that. I'm sorry if you weren't. But these little things are bugging me because I feel like they have given up on the show, and which means they've given up on the few viewers they have left. Now, moving on, Urko wants to declare war on the Underdwellers, and his witness is, he's got this old woman that we heard from, and we've got this soldier. And the old woman seems pretty credible. Here's something else that probably didn't bother you that bugged me a lot. When the soldier ape comes up and starts talking about his experience, about being attacked by the Underdwellers and being left in the Forbidden Zone, he's got a sling on and he's wearing torn clothing. Before they brought him to court, and they put the sling on him and he went to the hospital. I know that he says he just got back from the Forbidden Zone, but wouldn't they have cleaned him up a little bit? Maybe given him some new clothes?
All right, moving right along. So let's talk about that.
Why are we moving right along? This is stuff that legitimately bothered me about the episode. You had, in other episodes, talked about vampires and stuff. I just don't get it. This show seems sloppy to me. You're trying to defend it, but then when I bring up the sloppy stuff, you don't have answers.
I'm defending the whole plot. I'm not defending these little tiny nuances that, if anything, is just a visual. To see him with head bandages on and ripped clothing, it's more of a visual than if he came in with a pressed uniform.
But that's the way he should have come in. He could have still had the sling. He's more credible if he looks credible. So immediately when I saw the torn clothing and everything, I knew exactly what was going on. And any twist that they may have been planning, not to get ahead of ourselves, but, we're going to find out that these witnesses are fake. But the twist doesn't work because the minute I saw this torn clothing was the minute I knew that Urko was trying to pull something over on everyone. So I immediately knew what they were going to try to reveal later, and therefore it just didn't work for me. And it was all because of this one detail. And I feel like the animators and the producers, they got lazy on this show. They're not even trying anymore. And that bothers me. As I'm watching the show, everything's predictable because they're not thinking about how they're putting the show together.
But in terms of the producers and the animators, it's just there as a visual.
You know something? I found it took me out of the episode because all I kept thinking about was, why is he wearing torn clothing? Something else that's hitting me right now is the fact that this is how problematic this show is, because the fact that I'm noticing these little details that maybe should just be flying over my head basically means that the plot is not interesting enough to hold my attention, getting my mind to wander and notice all these little tiny things. Please remember that I've been pretty positive about this series as a whole. There's something about this, the sloppiness of this episode, that makes it very hard for me to really go along for the ride. But, that's what I have to say about that. Let's move on. Hopefully some listeners maybe have their opinions on this, and we can hear from them on Facebook. So let's just move on to the next scene.
Well, hold on. We got to reveal the big twist for this scene.
Right. The thing I kind of hinted to.
I don't want to say you spoiled it.
Okay.
But let's move on to that.
So tell everybody what the big twist is.
Those witnesses of Urko's, they weren't just witnesses. They were set up. They were plants. They were witness plants that Urko had told them what to say to gel with his story about the Underdwellers.
Even the old woman, she looks so naive and innocent.
Mrs. Von Gruen, whose punch stole was stolen. If I was Zayas, it's like, you know what, lady? Here's $2.99. Go get yourself a new punch bowl, okay?
I did actually find that kind of amusing, and I think they meant it to be amusing, that all these pieces of art are being stolen, and he brings on for a witness someone who had their punch bowl stolen.
Well, she did say it was her silver punch bowl, so maybe it was worth $3.99. I don't know. But Mark, what is the best part about this scene? What does Urko tell them that they should receive for their performances?
Oh, you mean what's the worst part of this scene?
Yes, that's what I said. What's the best part of the scene? Yes, that's what I said.
Well, the worst part of the scene is, this here.
Those were the greatest single performances I've ever seen, worthy of an Academy Award. To tell you the truth, I almost believed you myself.
Academy Award. That is funny stuff. I'm loving this.
I just want to ask you a question, since you're the big Urko guy. Is this the first time Urko's ever complimented anyone?
I think so. I think it is. Well, hold on, no. Urko has complimented himself many, many times.
Okay. So now we dissolve to the underground where the Underdwellers live, and you might recognize this location from the Unearthly Prophecy. Now, this is actually cool how the producers and the animators and the writers and everybody involved in making this episode are kind of hearkening back to a past episode by giving us this location and giving us the actual Underdwellers. So anyway, Bill, Jeff, and Judy are in the underground where the Underdwellers live, and they're talking amongst themselves when Krator arrives on the scene.
A primitive wilderness above ground. An advanced scientific technology below.
It's still hard to believe.
By this time, Krator knows we're here.
If we are to prevent war, we must hurry.
Krator!
You two will come with us.
Not so fast. What about Judy?
I shall mind transport Usa to the great cathedral.
But why?
Where we go, Usa cannot be allowed to travel.
Don't worry, Bill. I'll be all right.
Where are you taking us?
We go to the danger zone.
Okay, so the gist of the scene is relatively simple. Krator tells Bill and Jeff that they will come with him. And I took this to mean that he was going to bring them somewhere because he had something to show them. And it's not necessarily clear what he's going to be showing them, as if the producers of the show are trying to keep the audiences guessing. But I thought it was pretty obvious that he most likely was going to be taking them to the place where the stolen items were hidden. It's the only thing that makes sense.
I got a question. Why is Krator calling Judy Usa? He knows her real name. Why is he still calling her Usa?
Well, why wouldn't he call her Usa? He's been calling her Usa since we first met him. I mean, maybe it's just habit. Or maybe it just has something to do with the prophecy that we learned about in the Unearthly Prophecy episode, where Krator says that Usa is going to help them escape the below world and finally be able to live safely on the world above. If he were to start calling her Judy, then maybe that's giving up on her helping with the prophecy, since it's Usa that's supposed to help them, not Judy. I don't know, I'm just guessing, but does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, I can see that.
There are two more things that I'd like to point out in this scene. One is that Krator wants only to take Bill and Jeff, but not Judy. The reason isn't really made clear, but we'll get to that in a little bit. The important thing to remember is he says he's going to mind transport her to the cathedral. And the idea of mind transporting is going to come back later, so it's important to understand that Krator has the power to transport people from place to place with only the use of his mind. Also, when Bill asks where Krator is taking them, he says to the danger zone. And I just wanted to mention that the minute he said that, all of a sudden, Kenny Loggins was all I could hear in my head.
Best movie theme song of the 80s.
After he said Danger Zone, that's all I could think about. I had not thought about that song in years. The minute he said that, all of a sudden H&R Puffin' Stuff was out of my head, and Highway to the Danger Zone was all I could hear in my head.
You know, honestly, I like the theme song to HR Puffin' Stuff more than Danger Zone.
Anyway, so on the mention of Danger Zone, we fade to commercial because the word Danger Zone is supposed to keep us on the edge of our seat. And, you know, this is a good place for commercial. It does kind of work in that way.
Right, but Mark, let's do something different for this time. Instead of rolling in a vintage commercial, I found a clip of Roddy McDowell as he reads from the classic Batman movie novelization. And I just wanted a reason to hear Roddy McDowell's voice again. So let's go ahead and roll this.
A gloved fist smashed into the Joker's jaw, knocking him away from Vicky, sending him into a sprawl through the doors into the belfry. "I'm going to kill you," Batman said. "Oh, you crazy bastard," the Joker howled. "You made me, remember? You dropped me in the acid. It was pretty hard to settle down after that. Oh, God knows I tried." Still smiling, Batman nodded. "I made you, and you made me."
Now, you said this was from the classic Batman novelization. Is this from the 1989 Tim Burton Batman?
Yes, because this was the scene that Batman tells the Joker he knows who he is, and you made me, and I made you, and then we all made each other together, and then we made little Bat sequels.
but the Joker wasn't in the sequel, so...
But you can see where I'm going with that, though. But, you know what, the reason I wanted to play this was because of what we said earlier, that Krator, the actor who plays Krator, is the only one to give these actors, these characters, any kind of attitude, any kind of characteristics. And I'm really missing Roddy McDowall and hearing his voice come through Cornelius. So I just wanted to hear Roddy McDowall talk once again. And what better way than to have him read from the Tim Burton movie novelization from 1989.
Right. You know, I do miss Roddy McDowall as Cornelius. I really wish they had him in the Return to the Planet of the Apes series. All I can say is basically he maybe read the script for the Terror on Ice Mountain and the episode we're talking about right now and agreed with me and couldn't do it.
So you know what? If Mark is out, I'm out.
But I do miss hearing his voice, so it is kind of nice to listen to his voice in the midst of us talking about an episode that I didn't really enjoy.
Now, did you picture Roddy McDowall reading that, or did you picture Cornelius, Caesar, or Galen?
I kind of pictured all three, since they all kind of look alike. You know, that's an interesting question, because whenever I picture Roddy McDowall, I mean, I know what he looks like. You know, I've seen him without the makeup on, but I always think back to the makeup for some reason. And it might be because I just really love him in these roles so much that whenever I think of him, I immediately go with Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, here. This or the Goldie Hawn Kurt Russell masterpiece from 1988, Overboard.
Oh my God, I forgot he was in that.
Yeah, when I saw him in that, I thought, oh, Roddy, you're better than this, to play a butler with like 5 lines.
So we come back from commercial, and we start on this high-angle pan of the city, and we hear Zeus talking over the shot.
Incredible! How can you guarantee winning this war without the loss of a single ape?
The Ape City River flows underground at this point, and if we can detonate this tunnel at this point, the entire underground region will be flooded, and we'll be rid of those cursed Underdwellers forever.
Okay, so this is a very simple scene. It just kind of lets us be aware of what Urko's plan is, and the plan sounds pretty solid right now. And what's going on here is that the Ape City River evidently flows to a certain point where it is then stopped by a wall, which is acting like a dam. And this wall blocks the water from flowing into the underground where the Underdwellers live. And what Urko basically wants to do is he wants to blow up this wall so that the water will then flood into the underground and drown all of the Underdwellers. All in all, it's a pretty solid plan. It might be a very simple plan, but it sounds pretty solid for a kids show, so I'm buying into it. Unfortunately, when we get to the plan unfolding at the end of the episode, I'm going to have a lot of problems to talk about then, because when we actually see this plan in action, all of a sudden very little starts to make sense. And when we get there, trust me, I'm going to have plenty to say about how this simple plan just doesn't work out the way that it really should have.
Well, we're here right now, so can we talk about this? Because now I'm upset about this episode.
Okay.
So basically, he wants to detonate the river right below Ape City. Am I right?
Well, first of all, he's going to detonate a bomb, not the river. And also, we don't know that he's actually going to detonate the bomb anywhere near Ape City at this point. I'm assuming that the river actually flows through Ape City and then out into the Forbidden Zone. And it's actually in the Forbidden Zone where the river then makes its way underground to where the wall is that blocks the water from going into the underground. Because we, at this point, don't know that the Underdwellers live under Ape City, and because of things from past episodes, I certainly thought for sure they didn't live underneath Ape City. Of course, in a bit, we're going to find out that none of this is the case, but right now, as you're watching the episode, it kind of all makes sense.
But like we just heard in the clip, Urko says the Ape City River flows underground at this point. Oh, okay, so he's not really saying it's underneath Ape City. All right, you're right.
Right, and I understand where you're going with and why you might be angry with this, but let's wait till a little bit later in the episode when we get to the reveal of the fact that it is actually underneath Ape City.
Now, I'm looking at the drawing of Ape City that Urko's pointing to, and it looks like he's pointing at, looks like some kind of a wharf that leads into a big body of water, which is right next to Ape City.
Oh my God, I forgot about the map. And I guess the presence of this map means that you were right, and all of what I just explained actually doesn't apply. And now that I'm thinking back and trying to remember back. I think the part of the map that he's pointing to when he's talking about the river going underground, if I'm remembering correctly, that point is just inside Ape City. Oh my god, I can't believe I forgot about this. And I think that maybe I forgot about it because the map is not up for very long. And also, you're right, with him pointing to the map, it makes his plan seem kind of stupid right here. I guess I was just trying to connect some dots, and I guess these dots don't connect.
This is so stupid.
I just can't believe I forgot the map.
All right, I was agreeing with you, but you didn't notice.
I'm just not used to it.
Point well taken.
Thank you for agreeing with me. So we cut to the underground where Bill, Jeff, and Krator are traveling through the mine tunnels on a motorized platform, and Bill is wondering where Krator is taking them.
Where are we going, Krator?
To the end of the tunnel. One of our forward observation posts.
Look out! That was close.
No wonder he didn't want Judy to come with us.
Now, Bill yells, "Look out," because for absolutely no reason whatsoever, no earthquake, no nothing, a beam just decides to loosen and fall from the ceiling. And this is where we find out, or kind of find out, why Krator didn't want to bring Judy along with them as they made this journey to where Krator's taking them. Because when Krator makes it clear that he's only going to take Bill and Jeff with him while mind transporting Judy to the cathedral, I thought the show was kind of being sexist. You know, the woman needs to stay behind while the men do the work kind of thing.
It was the 70s.
Well, you know, I thought about it until I realized that this might not be true. And I think that the reason that Krator didn't want her to come along wasn't because he didn't think she could handle it, but it was because in his mind, she's a part of this prophecy. And so he needs to put extra protection on her and not be bringing her to areas underground where beams just, fall from the ceiling for no reason at all. He can't be bringing her into the danger zone because if she gets hurt or killed, then the prophecy that tells of them being able to make their way out of the underworld can't happen. She has to be safe in order to be able to play her part in that prophecy. And so I don't think it was because she was a woman. I think it was because he was protecting her, almost like you would protect a queen or a king.
Right.
And so this was actually something when I realized what it was, I thought was pretty smart about the episode. So chalk one up for the episode.
All right. Go on.
So now we reach the end of the tracks where the minecart can't go any further.
Hey, what is this? There's nothing here but a granite wall.
Behind it is what you seek.
How can you be so sure? This wall is at least 5 feet thick.
There is no mantle thick enough to hide the truth from us. See for yourself. Use your cutting tool.
All right, everybody. Stand back.
Hold up, Jeff. Krator, what's behind there?
It is the burial place of the apes. The place they call the tomb of the Unknown Ape.
So they've reached the end of the road, and Krator tells them what they seek is on the other side of this wall that's in front of them, in the tomb of the Unknown Ape. Another play on words.
Awesome. This show just gets better and better.
Now, here's something odd. Jeff takes a look at the wall, and just by looking at it, he can tell that it's 5 feet thick. How can he tell this?
He's just taking a guess.
Right.
He doesn't know. He's just arbitrarily setting a number.
The funny thing is that Jeff pulls out the laser drill to cut into the wall, as Krator suggested, but when he finishes cutting through and they pull out the slab of wall, it's actually revealed that this whole wall is only about a foot thick.
Okay, all right. I'm looking at more of 18 inches of wall, but if you see a foot, that's fine. We're not going to split hairs.
Okay, so we'll say a foot and a half.
Maybe 19 inches, but that's it.
It's still not as big as Jeff seemed to think, although, I don't even know why he was making the assumption. So they cut a hole in the wall that allows them to go inside the tomb, and we see all the ape treasures that have been stolen. And Bill, Jeff, and Krator go in to check it out. And what do we get a close-up of? The collected works of William Apespeare that Urko had at the council meeting. See, if they hadn't shown that here, it might not have bothered me so much at the council meeting. Yeah, it still would have made no sense. Why would he bring it there if it was stolen? But now it's in two places. So that kind of confuses me.
All right, I'm surprised you didn't see something else that they pan across, and that's the Mona Ape Elisa. How did you not see that?
Did you have to say that?
The Mona Ape Elisa. Look at that. That's a work of art right there. That's some good stuff.
Okay, but what I do find interesting is when Bill picks up and opens the collected works of William Ape Spear, which was stolen from Cornelius and Zira, they read what is written inside of it. It says, "To Cornelius and Zira on your wedding day, Uncle Herbert." Now, you're a collector. You've got all your Star Wars collectibles. And so I'm going to ask you point blank, is Uncle Herbert an idiot? According to the display case that we saw earlier, this was a first edition, probably worth a lot of money. Or at least it was worth a lot of money until Uncle Herbert decided to ruin it with his handwriting.
Yeah, I would disown Uncle Herbert if he wrote on the inside of a first edition of the Star Wars novel, circa 1976.
There you go. I couldn't believe it. It's like a first edition William Ape Spear, and he defaced it. He wrote in it.
I'm with you. I agree with you on this one.
Jeff then looks over and notices some robes like those that the Underdwellers wear. And this could have been interesting if they took some time to explore the idea that Bill and Jeff might actually think that the Underdwellers were guilty and maybe all this stuff with Krator is just a trap because they see these robes. But before we get a chance to see any doubt in Bill and Jeff, they hear something. And as they hide around the corner, they see gorillas coming in and they realize what's going on right away, which allowed no tension for that scene. And I just really thought it would have been interesting if they had started to second-guess Krator, or maybe started to think that other Underdwellers were in on this without Krator's knowledge. Like they were in on it with the apes, like some of the Underdwellers wanted war just as much as the apes did.
Right.
But nothing like that happens, and the minute Bill and Jeff see the gorillas, they know that it's the gorillas and the gorillas alone that are behind everything. And Bill says he has an idea, and they exit before getting caught, and we move on to the next scene. And we dissolve to what I'm assuming is a little later on the other side of the wall where Bill and Jeff are talking to Krator.
You see, it is as I said. No Underdweller has stolen anything.
We know.
Don't worry, Krator. Once Dr. Zaius finds out this was one of Urko's schemes, he'll call off the war, and fast.
He is just for an ape.
I'd sure like to see the look on Urko's face when he tries to talk his way out of this one.
Tomorrow, we'll have Cornelius tell Dr. Zaius that he stumbled across the loot on an archaeological expedition.
Tomorrow will be too late. Look!
I want every ounce of explosive in Ape City on that barge when we launch it. And hurry, we attack at dawn.
Okay, so before we get into what the plan is, I want to back up and just notice that in the middle of the scene, Krator does recognize that Zaius is just for an ape. So he actually sees the good in Zaius. And that just confirms my point that Krator should have transported a hologram to Zaius' office and talked to Zaius, and all this wouldn't have happened.
But that doesn't mean that he's going to listen to a humanoid or an Underdweller.
Right, but because Krator thought he was just, thought that he was good, I would have liked to have seen him at least give it a try. It could have also been an interesting scene if he had done it and Zaius had rejected him.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have at least seen the try.
You know what? I agree with that. To see an Underdweller and Dr. Zaius, that would have been interesting.
Right. So Bill's plan, which is actually a pretty decent one because I think that Zaius will listen to Cornelius and Zira. I didn't think he'd give him as much trouble as he eventually ends up giving them. But ultimately, I think that it's a pretty good plan to have Cornelius go to Zaius and pretend like he found something on this archaeological dig, which I guess is kind of strange. Why would he be doing an archaeological dig in the middle of the tomb of the Unknown Ape? But I'm kind of going with it at this point, and I like the idea of having Cornelius and Zira have to go to Zaius and convince him that they stumbled on some stuff that Zaius needs to now check out, and then they can bring Zaius, to the tomb and try to convince him of what's really going on. So now everything seems to be going in a good direction for once. That is until Bill suggests that they have Cornelius go to Zaius tomorrow with this information, on the next day with this information, and Krator insists that that will be too late. And in order to prove that this will be too late, he uses his eyeball laser projector powers to project on the wall what Urko was doing right now. And this is another problem that I have. Because with this laser beam projector power that allows Krator to always be able to see what is going on anywhere and at any point in time and project this on a wall, I have to wonder once again, why didn't he go to Zeus and show him what Urko was doing in this way with his projector eye laser thingamajiggies? And then Zeus wouldn't have been able to question it.
Yeah, but he wouldn't get through a sentence before Zeus would just put up a front.
I don't know. I feel like he should have at least tried.
If I was Krator, I would do exactly what Krator has been doing and going to the apes that could get an introduction into Zeus, knowing that Zeus would not listen to what I had to say.
But he doesn't really do that either because he goes to Bill, Jeff, and Judy first. It's actually Bill's idea for them to go to Cornelius and Zira.
He's got to start at the bottom of the food chain with the humanoids, work up to the chimpanzees, to the orangutans.
So anyway, Krator shoots out his laser eye projector or viewing, whatever it is, that goes out and hits the wall.
It's a Viewmaster.
A Viewmaster. That's actually kind of perfect for the 70s. Why haven't you ever found a commercial for that to put into the show?
Dang it.
And now the scene that Krator is projecting on the wall is of Urko, and he's on a dock next to the river addressing his men. And as Urko is addressing his men, we see this tarp filled with what we can only assume are explosives being loaded onto a barge. Once again, this is a small scene, but it's kind of interesting because it shows the extent of where Urko's plan is going. He's not just going to do what he generally does with the humanoids, and show up with one hand grenade that can be blocked by a shutter, if you remember that episode.
Nice callback.
But he actually maybe learned from that, and he's now going to fill this barge up with every explosive that Ape City has, which, once these explosives go off, is going to leave Ape City a little defenseless. But that's Urko. That's the way Urko's always been. Now, we cut to Cornelius and Zira, and they're in their bedroom. And Cornelius is having problems sleeping because he's worried about what's going to happen now that war has been declared, and actually how it's going to affect Bill, Jeff, and Judy, which I thought was kind of interesting. And as Cornelius is stressing this concern to Zira, we hear Bill's voice, mysteriously coming from nowhere, until we look into a small mirror where Bill's face appears.
Everything happens with a small mirror in this series.
Now that war has been declared, I'm so worried about Bill and Jeff and Judy, I don't think I'll ever get to sleep.
Forget about sleep, Cornelius.
Oh, all right. What? Who is it?
Cornelius, look.
Don't be frightened. It's me, Bill.
But how?
Krator is mind-transporting my image.
But why?
Because you have to wake Zeus and bring him to Ape City Graveyard, and fast.
Ape City Graveyard? You mean now? In the middle of the night? Why?
Urko's planning to attack at dawn.
But why Ape City Graveyard?
Because that's where Urko and his men stashed the loot from all the burglaries, including Zira's book.
Urko? No. I just can't believe an ape would do such a thing.
Well, I can.
The proof will be there. But you have to hurry. The fate of the Underdwellers is in your hands.
So, this is a strange scene, and I'm not necessarily sure in a good way, though. This whole thing with Krator mind-transporting Bill into the mirror, it might just be a little too corny. I'm not necessarily sure it's done very well, and I'm not necessarily sure I like it. And I gotta question why they didn't just have Bill and Jeff meet up with Zira and Cornelius the way they normally do. I don't know, it just all seems a little too much. Anyway, it's a small scene, and it's really only there so that Bill can tell Cornelius that he has to go wake up Dr. Zeus in the middle of the night and bring him to the graveyard where all will be revealed.
Do you think Zira was thinking, did you use that magic mirror last night, Bill? Because I'm really hoping you didn't.
Oh my god. Did you have to go there?
What? She was getting into bed and doing her yoga. I'm not sure what you're thinking, Mark. Get your mind out of the gutter, would you? Come on, Mark, focus.
I was thinking they had Highway to the Danger Zone playing, and they were pretending like they had mics, and they were dancing around.
In their underwear. Let's throw in every Tom Cruise reference we can.
this is a nice, simple scene, and I like actually seeing Cornelius and Zira's concern for Bill, Jeff, and Judy here. It adds a little bit of heart to the episode.
Mm-hmm.
So now we cut back to the docks, or actually, I guess this is the first time we're going to the docks, because the last time we went to the docks, it was through Krator's eyes, his laser projector, or whatever, his viewfinders. And Urko is surrounded by explosives.
Be careful with that, you idiot! How much longer will it take?
We will be ready by 0700, General.
Perfect. Just in time for the morning tide.
Did you notice how Urko was standing in this scene?
Like an action figure?
If you look at how he's got his hands on his hips and he's slightly bent back, I almost expected him, after he said just in time for the morning tide, to give off one of those evil laughs.
Looks like Urko's put on some weight in this shot, too.
And then we cut to what you like to call Zaius' Hitler-mobile, driving along the city streets, with Zaius and Cornelius in the back.
You better not have gotten me out of bed to go on some wild goose chase, Cornelius.
Oh, no, sir. I wouldn't do that.
I was wondering why Zaius was being so, I don't know, questioning Cornelius in a very stern way.
Well, he's asking, why are you pulling me out of bed to go on some kind of wild goose chase?
Right.
Why would he? Why? I just needed a good laugh at 3 a.m. Okay, we'll bring you back home now. I was just kidding you.
Right, and if you think about it, since Cornelius is pulling him out of bed so early in the morning, while he's trying to sleep, you would figure that Zaius would actually take that more serious and be asking, oh my God, what's going on? Where are you taking me? This must be important if you're going to wake me up in the middle of the night.
Right.
So I did find that kind of odd and a little out of character.
That got me angry, honestly.
Right. I think maybe they were doing it to try and make the scene more interesting, but it kind of took me out because I didn't like this aspect of Dr. Zaius. I like the Dr. Zaius who was always saying my children and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So now we cut to the tomb of the Unknown Ape, and we see a guerrilla soldier sleeping amongst the loot, only to find out that Krator has hypnotized him.
Amazing, Krator. You've hypnotized him.
But how does he come out of it?
When Dr. Zaius speaks, he will awake. He will remember nothing of us and speak only the truth.
Okay, so this is actually something that's kind of interesting, that Krator can hypnotize them, and then he's going to speak the truth when Dr. Zaius speaks. But I just thought it maybe was a little too easy. Dr. Zaius wasn't going to get down there and have to pull it out of him and figure it out. And it might have been fun to see the ape stumbling with trying to lie to him and stuff. So as much as it's kind of a cool idea that Krator can hypnotize him, I feel like it just seems a little too easy.
If you can do this, why not just hypnotize Urko? I hypnotized you. Now when you wake up, you can tell everyone that you stole the Ape Elisa, and your secret for it is that the Unknown Ape Soldier.
Right. So, see, a lot of this stuff isn't making sense. Now you're on board with me.
I hate this episode. I'm so frustrated right now. So frustrated.
Are you kidding? Should the audience take you seriously?
Not at all. Not at all.
Not at all what? The audience should take you seriously? Are you kidding?
There's a lot of problems with this, but I'm just, the fact that they say the Academy Ape Award and Ape Spear, that just brings me around.
Now we just need a big spider and you're loving the episode.
Oh my goodness, a spider or a sea serpent or a large gorilla. Oh, man, that would just turn you around, Mark.
So we now cut to the outside of the graveyard where Zaius and Cornelius have arrived.
Ape City Graveyard? I warn you, Cornelius. If this is some kind of joke...
You have to believe me. All the stolen goods and proof of who's guilty. It's all there. The tomb of the Unknown Ape.
Attention!
Huh? What? Dr. Zaius? Yes, sir.
What are you doing here?
General Urko's orders, sir. We suspect this place could be a possible entrance to the underground region.
The tomb of the Unknown Ape? Preposterous! Out of my way!
But, sir, I can't let you go in there without an authorization from General Urko.
Get out of my way, you fool! I command your commander!
So now they approach the tomb, and we find a soldier asleep, and they awaken him. And when they awaken him, the soldier doesn't immediately spill the beans. Instead, he starts to give some double talk. So I'm guessing that this soldier was not hypnotized by Krator, only the soldier/guard that's inside.
Yeah, you're right.
So does that mean he just fell asleep on his own while he's guarding all this stuff?
That's exactly what happened.
I don't have a problem with that. I'm not complaining about that part. I just think it's funny.
I'm complaining. If Urko's going to trust this guy, at least live up to your end of the deal.
So Zaius, tells the guy, get out of my way, because he wants to get through. And the soldier says, he can't do it without the authorization from General Urko. And I love Zaius' response. I command your commander. This line, I command your commander, as well as a couple of the other lines we're going to get throughout this episode, is right now making me think that when Zaius finally meets up with Urko, we're going to get that incredible confrontation I've been wanting through this whole entire series, where Urko's going insane and crazy, and Zaius wants to kick him out of the army, and we're finally going to get that head-to-head. And when he says, I command your commander, it feels like Zaius is getting really close to that point.
Yeah, he's about to snap.
Yeah, so that's a good thing in the episode, too.
All right, now, we dissolve to another cell that I would pay good money for. There's an ape sitting there in the tomb who looks like he's regretting eating something very bad but very good.
You want to know what my note says? It says he's looked like he's just stuffed himself full on Thanksgiving.
I would pay good money for this cell.
He's like lying there on the ground. He's asleep because obviously this is the gorilla that Krator hypnotized. But he's just looking like he is stuffed. His belly is all bloated. And he's got that William Ape Sphere book like so perfectly positioned on his belly.
Like he was just flipping through this first edition. No harm, no foul. Just want to see what was going on in the world of William Ape Spare.
So anyway, Zaius and Cornelius, they walk in and they wake him up.
You, God! I suppose you have a perfectly logical explanation for all this?
Yes, sir. It was all General Urko's idea. He was sure you'd declare war if we did it and blamed it on the Underdwellers.
And what was he planning with this after the war was over?
Why, return it. It's against ape law to steal. You know that, sir.
Have you heard enough, sir?
Unfortunately, yes.
Then we'd better hurry. Urko's planning to attack at dawn.
Well, his plans have just been changed. There's a walkie-talkie in my car. No one is to enter here without my authorization.
It looks like Krator's plan worked, because what's the first thing that the gorilla soldier does? He immediately spills the beans. First words out of his mouth. Yes, sir, it was all General Urko's idea. So here's the thing. From this point forward, Zaius needs to become friends with the Underdweller if he really wants to get even with Urko, because they could just hypnotize all these soldiers, march them into the council, and have them just spill the beans on everything Urko's done.
Yeah, and then Dr. Zaius asks the guard, what's going to happen after the war? And the guard says, well, we're going to return all the stuff because it's against ape law to steal. Wait a minute.
Yeah, it's interesting because it makes me think, were they really going to return the stuff? I mean, he was hypnotized to tell only the truth, right?
I'm sure. I'm sure they would have blamed the Underdwellers and say Zira and Cornelius, oh, here's your book. Sorry, the Underdwellers stole it and returned everything. No harm, no foul. The Underdwellers are all dead.
And if his reasoning is that, we're going to return all the stuff because it's against ape law to steal, does that mean that everybody in every culture where it's against the law to steal, their intent is always to return the stuff?
Okay, we can only steal when it's going to provoke war. Other than that, it's bad. Very, very bad.
It was really funny to watch him just spill the beans and then think that by saying we were going to return it, that everything was going to be okay. So we now dissolve to Urko, who is still at the docks, and I'm just wondering, how long does it take to load up a barge with explosives? Because they're still at the docks.
Apparently all night long.
Then something else happens that I found kind of weird when a guerrilla soldier calls into Urko with a message.
A message for you, General Urko.
Dr. Zaius knows everything.
Good work, Sergeant. Over and out. From now on, we will consider this mission top secret. We will observe complete radio silence until after the attack. Disconnect the radio.
Why is Urko so calm? He just found out about this major kink in his plan, and Urko's treating it like nothing happened. I know he's now going to maintain radio silence and go off on his own, but listen to his tone. The old Urko would have gotten upset, demanded to know what happened while blaming everybody. And I really am missing the old Urko.
I do miss old Urko, too.
Anyway, we go to commercial.
All right, so once again, let's not play a 1970s commercial. Instead, I found this really interesting interview with Mark Leonard because I've been missing the old Urko. So I wanted to hear a little bit about the kind of commitment that he had toward his role as General Urko on the live-action Planet of the Apes TV series.
Different sculptors, men and women, came in and in clay designed the different characters, the chimpanzees, which was Roddy McDowell and several others, and the orangutans, which was Dr. Zayas, and the different gorillas. I had one, anyway, that was molded in my face. They had to make a cast and everything. And every day that I came to work, I had a new one. It was kind of expensive. But anyway, when the thing fit so well, I found I could do all kinds of things with it. After all, it is really a piece of rubber, and it has no life unless you bring it life, your eyes, and you have to make faces like apes do, and that kind of makes the thing come alive. And your eyes are very important. People who saw me on the show recognized my voice. They said they recognized my eyes, and they recognized me. I thought at first, I'm playing an ape, and I told you I was a little bit insulted by it, just slightly. And afterwards, I kind of took it as a character role, really, with certain gorilla-like qualities, but he was a kind of a lusty, sort of hardy, not completely, a sort of devious fellow, but in a kind of innocent way, full of good humor. It was a very dynamic role and became, really, what they said was the most dynamic role on the show, and if it had gone on, they were planning all kinds of great things.
There's a lot of interviews with Mark Leonard out there on the internet if you go looking for them, and a lot of them are very, very interesting. And I like this one in particular, and we should put a link to the whole interview up on Facebook because we only played about a minute of this 7.5-minute interview that you can find up on YouTube.
And I really missed, like I was saying earlier, I missed this kind of commitment and acting with this cast of apes from Return of the Planet of the Apes. We didn't play in this clip, but he said it was kind of demeaning playing a gorilla soldier, but he overlooked that and said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to own it, and I'm really going to commit everything to playing General Urko, and that's what he did, and he did it, I think, brilliantly. I loved his portrayal as Urko.
It could be interesting, and I don't know if it's out there, but maybe we can go looking for it. If anybody knows if it exists, they can point us to it. It would be really interesting if there's any interview out there with Roddy McDowell or Mark Leonard or anybody from the live-action series or the movies that have ever commented on their opinion of the animated series and the characters that they played in the animated series and how they're being played by other people.
You'll never find that because it doesn't exist.
Mark Leonard actually in that interview also talks about having to project effectively the voice through the makeup. And the people who were doing the animated series, they didn't have that restriction. They didn't put him in makeup before they went and did the voiceover. I hope they didn't. So, but I'm glad, I always love listening to some of these old interviews, so good job finding this Mark Leonard one, and we will put a link to the whole 7.5 minutes up on our Facebook page.
All right, now let's fade back up on this episode.
All right, so when we come back from commercial, we are back with Zayas and Cornelius, and they're in the back of Zayas' car, or as you like to call it,
the Hitler-mobile.
There you go. And the driver is trying to make contact with Urko, who, of course, doesn't respond because, as we found out before the commercial, he's turned his radio off.
Zayas to Urko! Zayas to Urko! Come in, Urko! I can't make contact, sir. It's almost like their radio's been disconnected.
Then we'll deliver his new orders in person.
We'll never make it. The river's on the other side of town, and it's nearly dawn already.
We'll have to make it.
Now, I do want to make sure to mention something about this scene that I do like. And that's when Zayas can't get Urko on the radio, he says, well, we'll deliver his new orders in person. Because once again, we're kind of getting that Zayas, I'm going to take charge of Urko attitude.
Right.
And so I'm thinking it's leading up to a big confrontation. I'm thinking it. We'll see if it happens.
Okay.
So now Cornelius is worried that they're not going to make it on time because the river is all the way on the other side of the city. And we cut to Judy, Jeff, and Bill. And that's right, Judy is officially back in the story. Then all of a sudden a red light starts blinking, an alarm fills the air, and a door opens, and in comes Crador.
Crador, what is it?
You must take Usa deep into the Forbidden Zone. You must hurry.
Why? What's wrong?
The apes are still going through with the attack. Urkel will launch the barge at dawn.
But that can't be. Didn't Dr. Zaius order Urkel to call off the attack?
Urkel has ordered radio silence. Dr. Zaius is racing across the city, but he can't reach Urkel in time.
Then there must be something we can do.
Nothing. When the tunnel blows up, the entire underground region will be flooded, and Ape City will collapse on top of it. The underground region is under Ape City. Both our civilizations will be destroyed. I order you to go.
Do the people that Krator mind teleports to another place, do they have to be present with Krator? Couldn't he have just focused himself on to Zaius and mind teleported him to Urko? And then all of a sudden Zaius would have just been there and he could have done what he needed to do?
No.
You've done research on this, I can tell.
Just gonna say no. Let's move on.
Okay. So I wondered about that, and this, once again, little details that are bugging me because I just think that's what should have happened. Another thing that I started to realize in this particular scene, this is where I started to realize it, was that Krator seems to know Urko's every move. And it's because he can key in on him with these laser eye projectors or whatever it is you want to call them. And so if he knows all this information, why is he having such a hard time getting the best of Urko? The minute Krator becomes aware of Urko's plan, he has the element of surprise on his side. And he can shut Urko down. He can head him off at the pass. He can make sure that this stuff doesn't happen. But yet, he seems to always be waiting until it's too late.
Well, because I think he knows the apes have got more armament than he does. They have more weapons. If they start an attack, they'll be wiped out.
But why would that matter? I mean, Urko already has a plan that's going to wipe them out anyway. Since he can see every move that Urko makes, he has the element of surprise on his side, and they should at least attempt something before it's too late. This was another thing that bothered me, because I'm just like, well, why doesn't he just do this? I'm really not liking any of this, because none of it's making sense. It's like, oh my god, they could have done this. Oh my god, they could have done that.
Right.
And now here comes the part that we were talking about earlier that I said was mentioned later on. Krator says, when the tunnel blows up, the entire underground region will be flooded. Got it. And Ape City will collapse on top of it. The underground region is under Ape City. Both of our civilizations will be destroyed. And I got so many questions about this. Let's go over it relatively quickly, though. 1, I don't understand why Urko would be blowing up the tunnel wall if all of Ape City will be destroyed. He's destroying his own city. Is he so stupid that he doesn't realize this?
Yeah, that was my big plot hole right there. I'll give you that one. Big plot hole.
My other question is, when we got to know the Underdwellers in the earlier episodes, The Unearthly Prophecy and River of Flames, we learned that where they lived, their underground region, was all the way out in the Forbidden Zone. But now it seems to be moved to underneath Ape City, and they've totally broken the continuity here. And it really kind of bugs me because the thing I've been liking about most of the episodes is how they've had this continuity in order to tell a larger story. And here they've just broken it completely.
Maybe there's different parts of the Underdwellers' hideout.
Well, then when they find out about Urko's plan, they can all just go, let's get out of this area and go to this area, where the Ape City isn't going to collapse on it. But they're preparing for the end of the world, almost.
Yeah, I can't retcon that one.
So, see, you're starting to see the problems here.
Oh, I didn't deny at all there were problems with this. I never denied that.
Okay, so we cut back to Zaius' vehicle, which is speeding through the city. It's one shot, really relatively pointless, but I will give it this. I think it's the only shot in the whole entire episode that feels like padding. There's not a lot of padding shots in this episode.
You're right, yeah. There's been a couple I couldn't name, but they weren't a minute long where nothing happened.
I didn't really notice them, so that's, one more point in favor of this episode.
Boy, our love-hate balance is really in balance right now. Right. It's not teetering any which way until this next scene where we come to a line by Urko that I just love.
Okay, so I can't wait to hear it. So we dissolve to the docks where the Grillers are finally ready with the barge and the explosives.
Everything's ready, sir. The impact detonators are set. The minute they hit the wall at the end of the tunnel, they'll blow sky high.
Then cut it loose in the name of all peace-loving apes everywhere.
And so the barge is sent on its way, and Urko stands with his hands on his hips again, and now I'm curious what the line was.
Cut it loose in the name of peace-loving apes everywhere. I love that line.
He's obviously not talking about himself.
There's the irony.
Okay, that is a good line. I don't necessarily understand it because, like I said, he is not talking about himself, but I do love the fact that he says peace-loving. Don't ask me why. I don't think I can explain it to you. It's just something about that line.
I think it's my favorite line so far in the whole series. There's such irony in there. You gotta love it.
So now we go back to Bill, Jeff, and Judy, and I'm assuming they're in the Forbidden Zone at this point because Kratar told Bill and Jeff to take Judy, or as he calls her, Usa, into the Forbidden Zone where I guess she would be safe. But as we're going to learn, Bill and Jeff, they still want to help stop the barge. They don't want Urko's plan to succeed.
We can't let Urko destroy Kratar and his people.
Let's go back. Maybe we could cut through the tunnel wall in time to stop the barge.
Now let's think about this. What is Urko's plan? He's sending the barge to the end of the tunnel on the ape side. It's going to blow up the wall, which is going to cause all the water to flood into the underground region. Jeff is now saying that maybe they can cut through the tunnel wall in time to stop the barge. And I'm assuming at this point, and this does turn out to be the true thinking that he has, he wants to cut a hole into the tunnel wall to climb through the hole in order to get to the other side and get to the barge so they can stop it. But if he drills a hole in the tunnel wall, won't it do the same thing as blowing it up? Won't the hole that the laser drill creates allow for the water to flow through and flood the underground region? And even if it's a small enough hole just to fit them through, don't they risk the fact that it could weaken the wall so that the water can bust through and once again flood the underground region?
Yes.
So are we saying Jeff's an idiot and we only go with Bill's plans from now on?
In so many words, yes.
So you agree with me on this?
I do.
Okay, because it's going to get worse, because this is where, like, I just went insane from this point forward on this episode. I just couldn't believe what I was watching. So we agree on that. So let's go now to Zaius, who is confronting Urko.
General Urko, I order you to stop that barge full of explosives.
There's no way to stop it now.
I have been waiting for this inevitable confrontation between Zaius and Urko. And this is all I get? 2 sentences with no real anger behind them? What about a battle of words? Our argument about the puddle, yes, I'm going there. Our argument about the puddle in the last episode was more explosive than this. And I've been waiting for this moment, and I thought I was getting it. Zaius was talking as if we were going to get this. We pointed out lines of dialogue that said, hey, this is leading up to something. And I didn't feel like this confrontation was worthy of anything.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I thought at least Zaius would have ripped the helmet off of Urko the way you would the badges off of a soldier and say, all right, you're now a crossing guard.
Yeah, I expected something. Like when he orders that the barge be stopped, and Urko just says there's no way to stop it, I figured there would be a response like, you better find a way to stop it, or you'll be court-martialed, or I'll put you in jail, or I will make sure you never wear that helmet again. Something.
Yeah, Zaius dropped the ball on that one.
So now we go to a shot of the barge, and it's making its way towards the tunnel, and here's something that's actually kind of neat. The tunnel itself looks kind of cool.
Yeah.
It looks like a depressed ape, and the mouth is the tunnel opening. Of course, the tunnel is right there in the middle of the city, so I'm not sure, what Urko is thinking, but we talked about that already. What's he telling his men? Hey, let's detonate all the explosives that Ape City has to offer right in the middle of Ape City. And they're all agreeing with it, so I don't know what's going on here. And now we cut to what looks like the middle of a chapel of some sort, and Kratar is addressing a number of Underdwellers that are all dressed in these cloaks.
Hurry! There is little time. We must prepare to accept the inevitable.
Kratar!
You should not have returned.
Kratar, we have to reach that barge and try to stop it.
There is no way. The tunnel is at the farthest end of the subway system. The handcar could never get you there in time.
Then mind transport us there. Like we saw you do with Judy. Think us there.
Even if I did, the walls of the tunnel are 20 feet thick.
Our laser drill will take care of that.
Please, Kratar, it's a chance to save your people.
A remote chance. But, as you say, a chance. Yes, I'll do it.
Okay, so with this scene, the show just keeps getting worse because Krator is once again just being stupid. First of all, why doesn't he mind transport everybody out of there? Why does he just have to say, okay, everybody prepare for the inevitable, we're all going to die? He's not trying anything to save his own people. It takes Bill and Jeff to come back and help in order to save these Underdwellers. Then, when Bill and Jeff say they want to go to the barge to stop it, Krator knows that he can mind transport them there, but doesn't even stop to think about it. He just says the tunnel wall is too far, as if they're going to take the mine cart. It's Bill that has to bring up the mine transport as a way of getting them there. Then Krator has another problem that he hasn't thought through, because he says the tunnel wall is 20 feet thick. To which Jeff responds by saying that they have the laser drill to cut through the wall. And of course, Krator knows this. He's seen the laser drill used many times by now in this series. And not only that, I got an idea. Why doesn't Krator just mind transport Bill and Jeff to the other side of the wall? Why is he going to mind transport them to the Underdweller side and then force them to cut through the wall when he can just mind transport them to the ape side of the wall? This just doesn't make any sense to me. So the plan is basically that Krator is going to mind transport Bill and Jeff to the Underdweller side of the tunnel wall that Urko is going to blow up, and Bill and Jeff are going to drill through the wall in hopes that the whole Underdweller region is not destroyed, as we discussed. And Krator agrees, and he mind transports Bill and Jeff to the Underdweller side of the tunnel wall. And Jeff points the laser drill and fires it at the tunnel. Keep your fingers crossed that I'm wrong about what should happen. And we go back to Urko and Zaius, and the not-so-intense verbal battle continues.
General Urko, you realize I know everything? I suggest you prepare yourself for the consequences.
And I suggest we take cover, or there'll be no consequences for anyone. The barge will hit in exactly 1 minute.
Okay, so Zaius is, basically threatening consequences. So maybe we're getting a little bit of a confrontation. It just doesn't feel very strong to me.
No, not when Urko's declaring war on a whole race of people.
Yeah, he should have probably shown up with, soldiers that Urko doesn't have command over and really tried to take this guy down. This all just seems too gentle. And also, what does Urko mean, there will be no consequences for anyone? He says, I suggest we take cover, or there'll be no consequences for anyone. The barge will hit in exactly 1 minute. Well, he's assuming the barge is going to explode, and if they don't take cover, they're going to be killed, right?
Right.
Isn't that a consequence? I mean, death. I mean, you can't get worse than that.
Yeah, I'm trying to retcon that one, and I just can't.
By the end of the show, you're going to be on board with me on this, because there's not too much defense coming from the other side on this one.
You know what? I just keep thinking Academy Ape Award, Ape Elisa.
And it saves the whole thing for you.
Yes, it does.
So we cut back to Bill and Jeff, and we get Jeff, and he's still shooting the laser drill into the tunnel wall in order to make the hole. And it's taken a while, so maybe it is actually as thick as Krator was saying. And when they're through, I guess I was wrong because there were no consequences. No water comes through. And I personally can't figure out what's wrong. Did I read the situation wrong? Well, we're going to find out in a couple of minutes. Because now we cut back to Zaius, Urko, and Cornelius, and they're watching the barge as it makes their way into the tunnel. Not a lot going on here, just a simple scene to kind of keep the tension going. But then we get a shot of Bill and Jeff standing in the hole that they drilled in the wall. And Jeff is so happy that they made it all the way through the wall because he feels that they have made it in time.
Bill, look. We made it in time.
We haven't made it yet. Our only chance is that catwalk. Come on.
Okay, so first of all, how do I explain all the problems with Urko's plans here? And why the Underdwellers actually seem to be in no danger because of this shot that's revealed? If you look at the shot of Bill and Jeff, and I know you watch the show as we do this, so look at the shot of Bill and Jeff. They drilled this hole through the wall, and they're standing there, and they drilled the hole through the wall at floor level. If you remember seeing the shot of them drilling the hole inside the tunnel on the Underdweller side. So now they're standing in the hole, and they are actually above water level. So if the explosive goes off, the water would not flood the lower region because the opening to the tunnel floor on the Underdweller side is actually higher than the water level. So there would be no way for the water to flow into the tunnel.
I'm sure they were thinking when the explosion goes off, then that's when the water level is going to rise.
Why would the water rise?
Because when the explosion goes off, not so much rise, but a big tidal wave would then flood the area.
But enough to destroy all of the underground region?
With all that explosives? Oh, yeah.
I don't see...
Just like in Rogue One, when that one Death Star beam shoots down to Scarif, causing those huge tidal waves, destroys everything around.
But wait a minute, we're inside a tunnel. I mean, it's a totally different situation. It's a small enclosed area. There's a roof and sides. How would a tidal wave even work inside a situation like that?
Well, you know what? Once again, I'm just trying to retcon it.
It gets a little worse because I think they try to explain it in a couple of seconds in a way that I think the animators and producers might have thought it made sense. And it might just make sense in the long run, but by the time we get to this little section that I'm talking about, I had already asked all the questions that you're hearing me ask now. They had already entered into my mind because there's no way to foresee their answer coming in advance. So it's all confusing until we get there. And in reality, when we get there, it's going to feel like a cheat. Now, Bill and Jeff, they feel like they've made it on time, or Jeff at least thinks they made it on time, and Bill says, we haven't made it yet. And so when Bill's saying this, do you notice that the barge kind of goes by them?
Right.
And if they were at the tunnel wall that Urko was meaning to blow up, then the barge should have been coming straight at them. And at this point, I started to get confused. It didn't make sense. Why is the barge going past them as opposed to coming straight at them the way it should be? And I think the animators and the producers and the writers were hoping that we would just accept what was going on. And as a kid, I probably would have been on board. But as an adult, I'm confused. It doesn't make sense. Anyway, let's go a little bit further into this where Bill and Jeff run towards the catwalk that the barge is going to pass under. And they get on top of the catwalk and jump onto the barge as it's going underneath it. Then Jeff points forward into the tunnel at another tunnel wall. And he says, we'll never make it in time. Wait. There's another tunnel wall? This would have made sense and might have been actually kind of good as a misdirection if they had set it up better. And they didn't really set it up better. Everything they did made it look like Bill and Jeff were behind the correct wall. And if you look back on the episode, there's no little misdirections, nothing to misinterpret that could possibly insinuate the fact that no, there's another wall. Everything that led up to this point said there was only one wall that separated the water from the Underdwellers below world. And so if they could have just done something that misdirected us, this would have worked. But because it's edited really poorly and it's written really poorly, it just feels like a cheat to me. All right, so while all this is going on and my head is just spinning trying to figure it all out, we get the next thing that really bothers me, and that is the fact that all Bill has to do to save the day is put the barge in reverse. And that was just too easy. I just wish it had been a little bit more difficult than that. I mean, where's the tension? Even if it had been something as simple as the lever that, puts it in reverse is jammed, so it's not so easy. And he's like, oh my God, I can't get this to go into reverse. Just something to add a little bit more tension and make it not feel like it was the easiest thing in the world to solve this problem. And, hey, let's put it in reverse. Problem solved. They now are going to do something else that I'm going to ask you about, because now I hate Bill and Jeff forever. And that is they decide to surprise Urko by sending the barge full of explosives back out the tunnel towards Urko and Zeus to explode outside.
That's funny stuff.
Excuse me? What's so funny about that? They're going to send these explosives back out towards Zeus, Urko, and Cornelius. And when I realized that it was going to explode and Cornelius was right where they were sending the boat, I started to think, don't they care about Cornelius? They're putting Cornelius in a deadly situation.
Maybe they forgot he was there. Maybe they thought he would have left by now.
Maybe they thought that. It just felt like if there was even a chance that one of my friends was out there, I wouldn't have sent these explosives out there. No way. But they do, and they do it in a really corny way, and I'm not necessarily sure it would even work, but it's a cartoon, so it didn't bother me. Rather than just putting it in reverse and letting it go, which is all they needed to really do, they instead put it in forward motion. They drop the anchor so that when the anchor rope gets tight, the boat will then kind of circle around the anchor rope and head in the opposite direction. And not sure if that would actually work, but it looked kind of cool, so I'm accepting of it.
Well, apparently it did work. I'm watching it right now. Worked very well.
Right. So maybe, Bill and Jeff know something that I don't know. They got a little bit of Pete and Alan in them again.
There you go.
And then Bill and Jeff jump off the barge, and they watch it as it heads out the tunnel. And I have to think that they can see Zeus, Urko, and Cornelius out there because they're looking right out the tunnel. And you would figure that when they saw Cornelius standing next to Urko and Zeus, that they would shout to him, get out of the way. But they don't, and I really don't like Bill and Jeff for this.
Right.
Anyway, Urko and Dr. Zaius notice the barge coming their way filled with the explosives, and Urko starts screaming.
Run for it! Every ape for himself!
There's my second favorite line. Every ape for themselves. That's just such a cowardly line for Urko.
And the barge explodes off camera, and we don't get to see any of the destruction, which I wish I could have seen some of the destruction, but we don't get to see any of it. We just see mud and water raining down on all the apes.
But then, as the barge is exploding, we cut to that really nice cell of the reaction shot with Urko and Zaius.
There are a lot of really good cells in this episode.
Whereas the other ones were just funny, this one's really well drawn. There's a lot of detail in their faces.
Right. But that shot at the beginning, and then the one with the gorilla sleeping.
The overstuffed ape, and now this one here.
But none of it saved the show for me, because at this point, everything was just so confusing, and it just felt thrown together, and I won't go into it anymore. You get it.
I think we all get it.
So now, Dr. Zaius, General Urko, and Cornelius, they're all soaked and, covered in mud, and Zaius is pissed, and he finally shows some real guts as he threatens Urko.
General Urko, there shall be a full Senate investigation held on this matter, but not until you and your accomplices return everything you've stolen, and personally.
Things I don't like about this episode just keep continuing. They're not going to put Urko and his accomplices in shackles and throw them in prison. They're going to wait until they return the items. I'm sorry. Dr. Zaius knows where the stuff is. He can have other apes go out and retrieve them. Urko needs to go to jail. I want to see Zaius so ticked off that he's just going to throw Urko in jail. This is the confrontation I wanted, and I feel like it's the confrontation that everything was leading up to in this series, and we're not getting it, and I'm not really happy about this.
I think the only Zaius that would have done it is the Zaius we saw in the original Planet of the Apes film.
But, throughout the animated series, I feel like Zaius was slowly building to the point where he might have done it.
Well, this wasn't the episode.
I think that they were toning them down, and I'm wondering if it's because they realized they were a kid's show and started thinking, oh no, this is getting too extreme for kids, and they just started toning them down. It could happen. I mean, I've seen shows change just because of audience reaction, and a lot of times it's not for the better.
Right.
Now we cut inside into the underground region, and Kratar is addressing Jeff and Bill in front of the other Underdwellers.
You have risked your lives to save ours. We are forever in your debt.
We're just glad we were able to help.
When the prophecy is fulfilled, and we someday return to the green world above, we shall reward the friends of USA.
That won't be necessary, Kratar. But speaking of Judy...
Yeah, we'd better get back before she gets too worried.
Then go in peace.
Where is Judy at this point? Is she still in the Forbidden Zone? Probably not important, just a question that I had.
Maybe she's in her trailer.
Maybe. Then we go back to Ape City, where a council hearing is being held.
It is the decision of the council that General Urko be suspended from duty without pay for 3 months, and that he make a public apology to all peace-loving apes on national television. Power is something that must never, I repeat, never be misused. We sincerely trust the next time the good general has the best interest of apedom at heart, he doesn't take it upon himself to start a war. Do I make myself clear?
To be honest with you, as much as I like where this is heading, maybe in the next episode we're going to be getting an Urko with no power, and that could be really interesting. It ultimately just makes no sense to me. He's being suspended for 3 months. What does an ape have to do to get in real trouble? Shouldn't he be court-martialed, stripped of his title, given a dishonorable discharge, thrown in jail, and worst of all, shouldn't they take his helmet off and never give it back?
That's taking it too far, Mark. Come on. He wanted to start a war, okay? Don't take away his helmet. Boy, when you punish, you really punish.
At this point, I don't even know why I'm caring anymore, because it feels like the maker, they didn't care when they were making this. But I do, because I really want this show to go out on a high note. Here's the most interesting thing in the whole entire feast. We dissolve to the Forbidden Zone with Bill, Jeff, Judy, Zira, and Nova. Where did Nova come from all of a sudden? She's not in a single shot in the whole entire episode.
Yeah.
You mean if the explosives had have blown up the tunnel, Ape City would have been destroyed?
That's right, Zira.
Oh, we all owe you so much.
I just hope Urko learned his lesson.
We have a long trip back home to New Valley. We'd better get started.
You're right.
Goodbye, Cornelius. Zira.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. They're so wonderful. If I didn't know they were humanoids, I'd swear they were apes.
So they say their goodbyes, and Bill, Jeff, Judy, and Nova walk off, leaving Zira to have some final words that are kind of interesting, but that's the end of the episode.
All right, so you know what? I would ask you for your final thoughts, but I think I already know them.
The only thing I'll say, because I don't think I have to go into my final thoughts either, I think everybody got it. All the way through, I was trying to wonder to myself if I thought Terror on Ice Mountain was a worse episode than this one. And I decided to wait till after you and I talked to make that decision. And I'm going to say one really good thing about this episode. It's not as bad as Terror on Ice Mountain.
Oh, wow. That says a lot.
It does.
That says a lot. All right. Well, at least they're not going out on this episode here. They've got one more to redeem themselves.
Okay, so I know you don't want to hear any more from me because I've been a total pain in the butt throughout this whole entire episode. But we didn't get this up front completely, so let's at least get your overall reaction to the episode.
Well, I knew it was full of plot holes. But you know what? I knew that going in. It didn't bother me as much as it bothered you. I took it for what it was. So I didn't feel the need to have to nitpick throughout the whole episode because of it. The fact that that one guard had tattered clothes, I knew why. But the fact that this happened or that happened or things that weren't complete, I know they're trying to hurry things along. I knew that they were making these episodes for the 9 and 10-year-olds. I think that's what it really comes down to. It's not an excuse. It's just, it is what it is.
Right.
And I think it had a couple of fun, interesting twists for me, so I appreciated that. And the fact that it was taken out of context within the whole story arc, because this should have been aired as episode 6, not episode 12. If it had been aired then, it would have made more sense.
Can I tell you the one reason why I don't know if it would have worked better as episode 6? Because I kept mentioning it through the episode that I wanted to get to this. The reason that I don't think it would have worked as episode 6 is because at the end, Zaius does, have that final hearing and suspends Urko for 3 months at the end of the episode. And that would not have fit into episode 6. If you took that out, then maybe I could see it as episode 6. But because that's there, it really wouldn't work as episode 6.
All right, Mark, with that, let's get into Listen to the Apes, because we have a very interesting email from our good friend, Russ Flores. All right, so we got something from Russ Flores regarding the last episode in a big puddle debate. Puddlegate.
But before we read Russ's letter, let's remind everyone about what you're talking about. During the last episode of the show, Bill and Jeff said that they were going to get some water for an overheated radiator from a nearby river. And when we finally see them filling up their water canister, they're doing so not from the river, which is right there, but from what I thought was a puddle. You then proceeded to argue with me that this was actually not a puddle, and Puddlegate was born. And people can go to that last episode to hear this pretty heated debate. Now, Russ Flores wrote on our Facebook a response.
And Russ says, it doesn't look like the main river, but a river off stream running into the main river. Not a puddle, though. I like how it is jumping up into the container, meaning the water going up into the container where they're trying to fill for the radiator for their Jeep. Looks more like it is pouring out. I agree that it is not the main river, but based on the picture, it does not appear to be a puddle. You know what? Let's just end it right there. Russ says it is not a puddle.
I'm just going to have my small defense. I don't want you to start yelling and screaming at me.
But you know I will.
First of all, Arequa Pillskin, and I'm probably announcing that completely wrong, agrees with me, and she says it's a puddle. So there's that. But I'm going to address Russell. Now, I know we don't know how much further it goes off screen, but it literally could end right at the edge of the screen. We don't know where it's going. And so if you figure that this little piece of water that we're looking at ends at the edge of the screen, then it can't be more than maybe 3 feet long by 1.5 feet wide, maybe? That, to me, is a puddle. I don't care what anybody else says. Whatever kind of reasoning you want to go with it, it's small, it's a puddle.
We looked it up last episode, and the definition on internet, which is never wrong, is that it's a small body of water. that was not a small body of water.
And I would think 3 feet by 1.5 feet is a small body of water. I don't know what you think a small body of water is.
Let's just agree that this is Puddlegate 2017, because we're never going to agree.
It's weird. I think the last time Russ weighed in on one of our arguments, he was on my side. So now he's on your side.
Now he's on my side.
So we're 1-1.
All right. We have this episode and the next episode to go to see who Russ really believes in. Russ, you know where your allegiance lies. All right, Mark, with that, we really got to wrap up this episode of Talking Apes TV. We want to thank Angela Rushmere, who's been doing such a great bang-up job on our Facebook page and posting all these really fun pictures from each episode. We want to thank Rob Dellinger, who composed all the original jingles you hear on Talking Apes TV. And, of course, we want to thank my sweetie wife, Sarah, who posts the show every week and does all that technical fun stuff. Now, if you want to email us about puddles or plot holes, please do at apestv@skywalkingthroughneverland.com. You can tweet at us at Talking Apes TV or go to Facebook, facebook.com/TalkingApesTV. And please like us and share us with a friend. So until next time, this is Richard.
This is Mark.
And we will leave you with a preview of the next and last episode in the Return to the Planet of the Apes series, Battle of the Titans. Now go ape and puddle on.
Good morning, General.
Do you mock me, Private? Don't you know those bloated bureaucrats in the Simian Senate took away my rank for 3 months?
You will always be my general, sir.
You're a smart soldier. Colonel Rotok is your leader now. You must obey only him.
Yes, sir.
Obey Colonel Rotok. Remember that. Obey, obey, obey.
Thank you once again for listening to Talking Apes TV. You can help support Talking Apes TV by posting about us on Facebook, Twitter, or just tell another Planet of the Apes fan. We would also appreciate a 5-star review on iTunes. A link to our iTunes page can be found at skywalkingthroughneverland.com. Talking Apes TV was created by Richard Wolosky and Mark Agushowitz, with graphic design by Sarah Wolosky. Talking Apes TV is not affiliated with 20th Century Fox or the CBS network, and all names, sounds, or related items of Planet of the Apes are registered trademark and copyright 20th Century Fox, and the respected trademark and copyright holders. All rights reserved. Talking Apes TV is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. All the original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Hey Hey Entertainment, copyright 2017. All rights reserved. No part of this show may be repurposed, reproduced, redistributed, or rebroadcast without the written consent of Hey Hey Entertainment.